a podcast about product management, user experience design, technology, and more. This is Product by Design.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Product by Design. I am Kyle Evans, and today we are joined by another awesome guest, Jonas Rinde. Jonas, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm very excited to be here as well.
Awesome. All right, Jonas, let me give you a really brief intro, and then we'd love to hear a little bit more about you. But Jonas is one of the Nordic's most successful and acclaimed tech founders and investors, behind companies such as Nomono, Huddly, Acano, and Tandberg. The latter of two, which were acquired by Cisco for a combined $4 billion US dollars. And most recently, the podcast tech startup Nomono, which we're going to talk more about. And I'm super excited, obviously, because we love podcast and podcasting. So with that brief background, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Jonas?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Thank you. I guess you can't hear it in English, but I'm a Swedish guy based in Norway. So I moved to the little brother countries, we call it. It's comparable to what the US and Canadians usually kind of broadly fight about. So it's, the big brother and the small brother. Approximately have like 20 years experience of working in tech and product development. As a kid, I was really into building Lego. I can see from your rocket in the background there as well. You're a fan as well. But also, drawing cars and boats. So from that, moving into computers, 3D animations, and being always interested in the combination of those. That took me into design. So as a kid, I was pretty early on interested in product design and car design, and kind of followed that dream. And along the way, stumbled up on interesting companies. So I did my first years in Ericsson, a Swedish company, and then moved over to Sony Ericsson, mobile phones, and then over to the dream, Volvo Cars in Sweden. And then after that, found out that, I want to do the skiing thing because that's a big part of my life. And Norway is a fantastic country when it comes to fjords and mountains. So I moved to Norway, and there was a company, it was super interesting, called Tandberg. And I was lucky enough to get a job there, start working there. And that's where I kind of find my home as well. Fantastic culture, strong focus on design and product development. And you told a little bit about what happened afterwards in terms of Cisco acquiring them. And some guys spun out new companies. I was one of them. So I did a company called Electric White with the idea of just putting an iPad on the wall. And we built that into another company called Acano. And from there, we also acquired Cisco again. And after that, jumped into another company called Huddly, which built a pretty awesome smart AI video conferencing camera, where we got a pretty cool partnership with the Google. We're happy with that. And then from that, moved on to where we are now, Nomono, an audio tech startup we've been building for almost 4 years now. I think that was the long story short.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to dive into a little bit more because I think that's an incredible background and some really, really fascinating stories within that. But before we do kind of dive into a few of those items, tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you like to do outside of the office. You mentioned skiing as one of those and Legos as potentially another, but what are some of the things that you enjoy doing outside of startups and outside of the office?
Yeah, I do a lot of kind of recharging and bring back some energy and kind of clear your head is skiing. I think it's an awesome exercise to do. And also I'm a big fan of mountain biking as well. So I think those two are kind of also a bit season, doing the mountain biking in the summer and skiing in the winter. And what I like about those activities in sport is the focus you need while you're riding. And of course, the speed and thrill of it. So it's been on the private side, that's been kind of what I've been spending my time. And now over the last year, of course, building a family. It's been a true joy as well. I got 2 daughters that are in school. So at the moment, I'm starting to get back more time, to be honest. They're kind of starting to be a bit grown-ups, which is good. So in a very lucky state at the moment, so to say. But I think it's important then to have some hobbies and things to focus on in your spare time, because building startup is a lifestyle, and I guess the one who listening to this also can reflect and kind of also recognize himself in how much time it takes, mind focus, and also core of the awake hours, so to say. So that's why it's important then to have some things to kind of recharge your batteries and refocus. And I guess, at least most of my best ideas, they come from when I step out the office or the working environment and do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. And especially this time of year, I mean, we're recording in wintertime at really the beginning of the ski season. We actually, my family and I just got up skiing for the first time a couple of days ago. So we started our ski season as well. So super excited to be finally skiing again, which is great. So I'll be excited maybe one day to compare the snow we're based in Utah, which is pretty good snow, but I don't know how it compares to some of the Nordic snow, which obviously is as well. So maybe one day I'll get the chance to compare. But that sounds super, super amazing. Absolutely love it. All right. I kind of want to hear, you kind of gave us the overview of your journey, kind of from the beginning, some of the large companies, but tell us a little bit more about, what brought you into starting some of the companies that you did and really founding them, and some of this entrepreneurial journey that you took. What was kind of the impetus for starting your own companies, and especially the most recent one that you have focusing on the audio space? What kind of drove you to doing some of that?
If I look back on my career and what I'm doing, is that my background is design and product development, but I learned over the years that you can make the most awesome product that fulfills the need of the end user and what have you, but that doesn't mean really you get a success just doing a really good product. There are so many other factors around that. So over the years, those other factors outside of product development got me interested. How to make sure the product you have invested so much time and effort into together with the team, how can also make sure it has a global reach and reach as many end users as possible to enlighten them in their life as well. And that's where you learn a lot about finance and sales and marketing, timing, etc., etc. And I think that's, at least for me, has been a very fun learning. There's a lot of risk along the way, but that's but to be honest, my main purpose of starting the companies and taking on responsible as co-founder and CEO is to ensure that the product reaches the user in the best possible way. So that's still my kind of main focus and main purpose. And I'm a big fan of the starting phase in the companies, when you start from the ideas, the concept, because everything is possible. And for me, that's motivating. I know a few of my friends and colleagues that get stressed by all the questions with no answers, but I'm kind of on the opposite side there. I like that challenge because in the beginning you have so much different choices to make and factors, and in the process you start to kind of narrow in, and doing that process, suddenly you start to get the feeling that you're getting to what you call a holy grail, or something that you think is going to be really, really valuable for the end user. And that is I think at least in this evolution, and when you build the company and the product, that's where you kind of get into that feeling that, wow, here we have something that is really awesome. That's at least for me, the big motivation. And from there, it takes some years and some hard work to get that product, being a hardware or software solution, into the hands of the user. And I think over the years you get experience, so you have some kind of recipe to ensure at least that you can bring it to the market in potentially shorter time, but also ensure that you keep it consistent as well. So taking now with Nomono, it's my co-founder Audun. I hired him from university back in the Tandberg days. So he was an expert on microphone arrays. So he worked in my department back in Tandberg, developing microphones. And Then I went into Huddly, and he also helped out designing microphone arrays there on the small video conferencing cameras, and that's where we met again. And he was doing research on how to capture spatial audio. And spatial audio, for the one who does not know, is kind of more famous now, like with Dolby Atmos, and it's used for the XR, like the AR and VR worlds. And I guess most people who has an iPhone and AirPods today know there's a spatial feature. But keep in mind, he's starting researching on this almost 6 years ago now. So it's also back to this kind of foresee the future, potential macro trends that's going to happen in the future, and try to time that as good as possible with something. And at the time, you also depend on technology to support the solution design. So there's so many, I wouldn't call it flying objects to kind of balance out there, but there's a lot of things. And when you start to see those stars align, you see the trends of, for example, on spatial audio with the XR. You see that chip manufacturers start to get technology with low power consumption. You get new Bluetooth standards, and these kind of things start to align. And you finally like, now is the time to get started. So with Nomono, we had, and we still have, of course, the IPR and the patents around how to capture spatial audio. And that's what we kind of built into our solution now. And we had made it so easy. So it's just one button to push to capture this. Because if you look behind the scenes, there's 12 microcontrollers working together. So it's pretty dead. It's the most advanced product I've been working on. I think that's also part of the motivation doing another company in tech space. So one thing is it's complex product, but it's easy to use. But also going into a new market like the audio market, which from our perspective, when we went into it, looked like almost like a status quo, especially on the microphone side, because they've been looking and behaving the same for the last maybe 20 years or more. So that was also a motivation for us to create what we call a smart microphone that not only just capture audio frequency in different channels, but also captures metadata. So it gets a better understanding on the whereabouts, in what scenario is being used, and etc. And things that we can use for AI. So our AI gets just not only audio files, it gets also a lot of metadata, which it then can use some of our magic algorithms to kind of improve the audio. And everything that we have done is all about ease of use. It's all about enlightening the end user and giving them a feeling of kind of superhero powers. Because we want to wow the end user in being easy to use, but the output we get from solution is super high quality. So everything is lossless audio. So what we call is kind of broadcast ready. And that's why also while working with this, our pilot customers has been large media agencies with skilled people. We have one guy, we work with microphone for 35 years. And when he goes, nice guys, this sounds awesome. And that was a very early prototype we had as well. Then at least you get a small proof that you're onto something. So, and these kind of proof points are trying to find while you build these companies, while you develop as well. So, yeah.
That is super exciting. That's incredible. I'm really interested in, a few points that you touched on, but this idea of really the right timing, because you talked a lot about the idea that, there's kind of this timing of what's going on in the market, along with the technology that is being developed. And sometimes you see companies that have amazing ideas or amazing products that are, we call them ahead of their time. And, the technology just isn't there. And, then we have, companies that are possibly late to the game and that sort of thing. But this kind of sweet spot of the technology is there at the right time and the market is developing at the right time, kind of like you talked about, like the processors are getting there, and we're able to start to incorporate AI into capturing the audio like you're doing. All of these things really coming together. Tell us more about how those things come together to really create the right product and the right market environment, and kind of what you're seeing with that and how that plays into kind of creating both the right product and the right product market fit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So over the years, been following very close on the consumer market, because the consumer pull is also pulling a lot of the technology innovation. So if you look on Nomono, the chipset we're using in our product, most of the chipset has been designed for consumer tech. So that's also one thing, at least look on these macro trends and see on the user behavior, because that has implications, and also understanding that is important. So there's a lot of effort going into that. And me personally, I foresee myself being kind of an early adopter. So I'm pretty heavy on new technology. Of course, it's my big interest in life, but it's also testing and challenging myself on learning new things, but also in this process, try to get some wow facts, understanding what the big guys are doing, but also some small startup coming. I'm pretty spending money on Kickstarter as well to get a hold of new things. And I think the sum of that, you start to get a feeling or a view on the things yourself potentially going to work on or are working on, how that can fit in. So I think Nomono is a good example how we started with some really interesting technology. I was in a basement in a research lab where Audo had built this Frankenstein solution, and it worked. It captures spatial audio. I got to listen to it, and I was wowed by hearing the audio in the same way I do in kind of real life, but at this time we're using headphones. And that started to kind of, you start to realize this could be a pretty hefty impact on people. Like what we say, put the listener inside the story. At the time, we didn't know that Apple's going to do spatial audio on the iPhone or the AirPods, but we foresee, at least if you look on the history of how we consume media, how we consume content, that is moving in that direction. You had Oculus, you had this, but it hasn't really taken off yet, has it? I mean, it's pretty awkward to be a few people in a room and start using Oculus, for example, headsets. So, but potentially some glasses is coming. We hear and see some rumors. So we keep an eye on that. And to get content into that, one thing is getting the video in there, but getting the audio in there is a challenge. And that's where we kind of saw that we are sitting on that solution. We are kind of taking away that bottleneck to create content for spatial audio. But as you mentioned, timing, and this is like 4 years back in time, there was, from our perspective, not big enough market to do spatial audio capture for 3D or XR at the moment. However, though, what we realized is podcasting has been kind of growing rapidly over the years. And the format is very interesting because there's something you consume while you go to sleep, you commute, or maybe do boring tasks at home like cleaning the house. Because the podcast, it doesn't distract you so much as kind of video content does, because video takes your whole focus. So that was very interesting from our perspective. And having the audio competence, having this technology, we're starting to realize that using these algorithms, one thing is to create the spatial audio, but we can also use it in another purpose. We can then take away the ambience, or some people call the noise. So from that perspective, we started to realize that we could give an opportunity for people that can just record any audio in any scenario, but after the fact, do changes to it. So you just capture the audio you want to capture, lossless, high quality. Then afterwards, as we capture so much, we got like 12 channels of audio, plus all the metadata combined to those 12 channels. We get so much information that we can do a lot of cool things after the fact. You can move around the objects. It doesn't matter really what the microphone were at the recording, because you can change it afterwards. It's almost like when you take photography and you have like unlimited autofocus, so you can just change the focus afterwards, for example. And when we went then into the podcasting thing, and we started to realize that this is pretty awesome, we also realized just the workflow, how you capture audio is a big challenge. We just realized that with the microphones and the cables, one thing is to know what to buy. And then start to use those, being field recorders with small LCD displays or just being standard microphones. But then also understanding which scenarios you're supposed to use different microphones. And still doing that, you don't have control in that scenario, especially when you're out in the field. Is the windy day, or is other noise, or even the person you're interviewing, he or she, are they used to talk to a microphone? And also their voice. So, I mean, when you start to summarize all the factors you need to have control over to capture good audio, you start to realize it's super complex. And that's why you look into the bigger professional productions. They are really skilled people. I mentioned the guy we met who's been working with microphones for 35 years. And it started to be really challenging. And then when you capture that audio, and you were lucky enough doing it with high quality, you need to store it somewhere. You have SD cards, or you need to put it on your PC or your Mac. And then you have to bring it into your digital audio workstation, your DAW. And there are different applications for that. Or you use a web application to kind of clean up the audio because you want to take away some part of the noise and whatever. And there are several solutions for that as well. But still, the files you have captured need to move around in different platforms. And you keep track on that. And then you probably want to share it with somebody who want to comment or listen into it. Is it a customer of yours, a person you interviewed? Then, where are you going to send a Dropbox link, or what format are you going to use? They want to comment. Where do they comment? Do they send you an email, or how? And so, I mean, you look into the different steps in the workflow. Well, we realized it's super complex. So we thought, let's do this easy. We have this tremendous technology that can capture audio with all the data. Let's keep that as a red thread through the workflow. So what we have done in Nomono is that the audio file is the backbone in your workflow. So everything revolves around the audio file. And there you have also the metadata. So with our solution, one button to push when you use it. And then afterwards, you can just, after the fact, do changes to it. And you can also enhance the audio and improve it. And you can share it. So in our solution, you can also collaborate. Just send people a link and they can click on it, and then boom, they come straight into the audio file and can comment there. So it's we have seen already it's very, very powerful, and it reduces so much time, effort, but also enables people who has no experience of audio to be able to do really high quality productions as a one woman or one man show, would say. So it's probably a long answer to your question. I think it's important to give the full color here as well.
With all of that, with audio and specifically with podcasting, and bringing that technology and really the simplicity into both the workflow and just the general accessibility of it, how do you see that impacting both podcasting in general as kind of a next step, but just audio in general going forward? Like what do you see kind of the technology that you're working on and some of these things, like what do you see that impact being both for podcasting and beyond podcasting?
What we see with our solution is that we enable anyone to capture good audio. And that they're not limited to be in a studio, they're not limited to maybe rent expensive equipment or use many hours. So what we see with our early beta customers is they can now start to more freely capture stories. And it can be pretty compelling places where they can capture the stories. So for example, if they are doing some interviews, they can show up where the person are and do an interview there. And they're like just 12 seconds to get going. They don't have to rig a lot of equipment. So I think it eases a lot of stress. But it can also be on a park bench. And when you do maybe in New York City and being in Central Park, interviewing a person there using our technology, you also capture all the other ambient audio, being the birds, dog barking, and what have you. So when you as a listener listen input on that interview in that podcast, for example, like I'm doing now using your headphones, you get a feeling of being there, being on the bench in Central Park and hearing that. And I think that, gives the creator some really cool power, being back to what I mentioned earlier about putting the listener inside the story. And the story that's being told gets some more immersive. And for us human being Homo sapiens and, being programmed on storytelling and gossips and what have you, it's really triggering our nerve system and brain in a positive way when stories are being told in a very immersive way. And I think that's the key thing with spatial audio and the way we can now start to experience audio in a different way versus like what we used at least with headphones is like stereo and mono sound as well. So and doing the recording as well, because the key thing when we design is to make the technology fade away. So you focus more on the people and the story. Compared to today, where you have big membrane microphones in the studio, or somebody is having a field recorder, they just shovel up in your face, and you can see people get a little bit stiff or nervous or uncomfortable with having this technology straight in their face. Where we see with our solution, it's a small lav mic that you click on, and it kind of disappears when you start talking. And that we see is a quality on the dialogue as well, because people are more relaxed. And that is, I think it's really, really cool. And for podcasting, that is then the stories that we tell, being more true stories, giving more people a chance to tell good stories. So we, as consumers or listeners at least the audio quality shouldn't be a factor that makes us stop listening to some podcast episode. We are kind of democratizing high quality audio quality, that anyone who wants to do can do it on a high quality audio. So at least that factor has been reduced to almost zero for the ones, because we met people that have very good strong stories, but the audio is so bad that you get kind of tired, you get fatigue after listening for a while, and that's pretty sad. Where you can have them have good technology. Other examples are professionals, audio producers that do interviews or do recordings. Some of the beta customers, they don't want to interact. They want to be in another room, because when they have their boom mics and other thing with technology, the people in rooms start to kind of, although they're not in the dialogue, they're kind of disturbing, having this third or fourth guy running around in the background microphones or checking technology. So we have some use cases now where they want to just use our sound capsule, drop it in the room, and then leave the room and go out and let the dialogue float freely inside a family, for example, or between colleagues or what have you. And that's also pretty cool as well. And that's the scenario we didn't kind of foresee as being so important, but we got a lot of feedback. So that means, for example, we have our own Nomono companion app, which is connected to the space recorder. That means you could leave the room and kind of follow the recording happening in the room from outside. We had one scenario with politicians, for example, where there were one who was kind of needed to listen in, but they can be on the other side of the room using our app and listen into that and not interact with the politicians in the same room. So this is pretty. So key thing here: true stories, immersive stories between humans, and ensure that is high quality. That's our key kind of purpose as well.
I think I absolutely love that, because I think that storytelling and being able to capture those stories is probably one of the most compelling things about us as people, and the stories that we have, and being able to tell those stories is just, it's so powerful and so important. And so being able to do that in such a meaningful way, and then being able to make it immersive, like you're talking about, to have these stories and to capture them, and then again to make it really, really powerful and really simple and really immersive, that's such an exciting proposition. I absolutely love it. So such exciting stuff in so many different ways. Talking a little bit more about your company, you referenced your co-founder a couple times, and this is obviously a big part of any company, and obviously starting companies, but having the right people involved. Tell us a little bit more about how that came about, how you identified him in bringing him in, how you do that, building a team, making sure you're bringing in the right people, and making sure everybody is really kind of bought in, and really driving the mission forward. So tell us a little bit more about that, and how you go about both finding the right people and bringing the right people in to help build these types of companies and the vision that they have.
Yeah, so I think what was fun with Nomono, it started the other way around. So he has been researching on something, and we knew each other from before. So it started with he was asking me, "Do you know somebody that I can bring on to be a CEO co-founder with me?" And I did a job and started to kind of think about, okay, in our network, is there somebody I can recommend to him to help him get started? Along the way, he at least invited me to as I mentioned, the labs, and I got to see this Frankenstein thing, and I was so compelled by what he's showing. So I started, this is a lot of opportunities there. There's something really cool about this, and want to be before the wave and kind of surf it, grow. So so that's how it kind of started. However, we have a third co-founder as well, Sigurd. He's the older guy of us, but very experienced on the software side. And that was also like back to Auden was a key thing, to get him, because Auden knew Sigurd from before. And I said, like, okay, to get started, it's okay with us too, but we need Sigurd as well. We need his software skills to get this flying. So we got him on board early. He was also interested in the adventure. And from there, we've been using our own networks. So being in large corporations before is pretty positive from that perspective, because you get to know a lot of skilled people, and they are in your network. So usually at least myself, we start in people we were working with before, people we know the skill set, and they know me as well, my strength and my weakness. So you get off on a really good start when you start building something. And I think that takes away a lot of risk. And from there, I usually try to balance getting really young people straight out of university, combined with experienced people. There's a very interesting energy happening there, where I have experienced young people. Well, they're probably unexperienced on being in a startup and taking on these big technical challenges. But on the other hand, they are so full of energy and passion, and they are better. As I mentioned earlier, I think look on the consumer trends is important. And over the years, I'm not that on TikTok, for example, or even on Snap, but the young people you're bringing, they don't know anything else. They like emails. No, I'm not using that. Have you heard of Facebook? Yeah, I've heard of it, but that's like the old people using that. We are all on Snap, but so they are consuming the latest technology and use it, and that's so important when you build a company, because then you have the young people in the company who has that experience and understanding of that. Also, when you develop your solutions, they haven't. Then you have us, the older guys, with some experience and done some mistakes before. And as I mentioned earlier, you start to get some kind of recipe, at least to avoid the biggest dangers when you're building as well. So that is I think, and then that's pretty funny, and it's also a red thread here, that being the older guys, so to say, and women, we are pretty childish in our mindset, and that's also a good combination when you're building as well, because you have this not fear of trying things new or playing around. And that helps as well also in the creative phases. So yeah, that's the key thing. Get people from your own network is I think it's key.
Maybe if you have, I'd be curious, like what advice that you have as for anybody who's kind of looking to do something similar. So as others are thinking about starting their own company or a startup, or even just kind of getting into their own type of idea, kind of like you've done, what have been some of the things that you have learned through the numerous cycles that you've been through, both the good and the bad, and what advice would you give to somebody who's interested in something similar?
Yeah, I think it's at least from my experience, it's super important to follow the macro trends in the world. because those are the trends I use for inspiration of what to create, but also to challenge the idea. Try to challenge your own idea. How do you foresee the future is going to be? And you can play with different scenarios. By those different scenarios, challenge your idea. And I like to keep it simple. So I usually think about things in 3 steps. So I come back again to challenge your idea. For example, I usually think about, of course, a worst case scenario, a mid case, or kind of a sky case as well, where it goes well. So I think that's really, really important, because when you start to challenge your own concept ideas, that's also when potentially also start to improve it or generate new ideas. And if you feel like yourself that you don't have the competence or experience regarding different kind of micro trends or challenges, try to look around in your network or just ask people. And I think, you have LinkedIn, for example, now. That wasn't around for like 20 years ago, but I think that's and I got asked by people, they just come on LinkedIn, find my profile, and they ask question, and I kind of feel it's very fun to what we call pay it forward. I'm happy to help and answering those questions, because you always learn something new, and I think that's important. So don't be afraid to ask, and reach out to people that you find potentially could have some feedback, but also just ask for that and get there. But do your own mathematics or analyze all that feedback you get, because I learned a lot that from doing design school, how you have to take all the factors in, but then you have to kind of work on it with yourself or your team to find what's the kind of best balance of it. It's so many times I see that somebody has a very good idea, and they ask a few people, and sometimes they're too easy to change the direction or do changes to the ideas because of that very early feedback. So it's important to question that. But you also have the example, on the other hand, people that's very stubborn on the idea and doesn't listen in. So it's, I think this is a $1 billion question to answer. And it's up to the individual, but search for advice, search for feedback. But, make sure at least yourself are feeling solid in your thinking around the idea. Because at the end, you are the one who has to deliver it all the way from being an idea to something that is finalized and in the hand of a user. And there's so many times you have seen really, really good ideas, but they kind of fail on the execution part there. And you see pretty bad ideas, but they're well executed. So I hope for the better and for the world and for the future that we get better ideas, better executed in the hands of the users as well. And I'm at least trying to do my work there as well. But it's also risk taking though. So, I think it's a mind game as well, because you need also to be a bit paranoid, but I call it healthy paranoid. And that helps when you also take the risk, because you don't want to be naive either. So so for anybody listening, just go do it. I think that's because you learn so much, and keep in mind, what's the worst that can happen? And that's usually what I use. And I sleep pretty good at night. What's the worst that can happen? The worst is that you learn something. And I think that's the good thing as well. And for me personally, I do this because I like the learning. That's why, for example, with Nomono now going into the audio industry, it's so much learning to do. And there's so much fantastic people in the media space, especially in the podcast community. Every trade show we be at, every event, we kind of met so many friends with open arms. And it's, I have to be honest, I really enjoy being in the podcast movement versus maybe the other industries I've been in before, because there are so many talented people. And similar with you, Kyle, you have a story you want to bring to your listeners. And that is so powerful. And for me and our company now, Nomono, to be a part of helping all the storytellers to bring the stories to listener, that is, at least that's for me now is the big motivation. And that goes back to all of you who have ideas and, trying to figure out how to get started building your own company and foster your idea. Keep in mind how to put your idea in the bigger perspective, the bigger perspective for us humans, how it can bring value and enlighten us. And that's, I think, is also a very good challenge on an idea. How will my idea, concept, solution, product improve people's lives, reduce stress, get more time? Because at the end, when you start to market your product and find a price point on it and start to sell it, that's really what makes the sense. The storytelling you have around your product or your idea as well, when you kind of entering or building your market as well. So yeah, just do it.
That's amazing advice, and I think it's such a great place to probably to pause and say, yeah, absolutely, just do it, because you'll learn so much by doing it. So, Jonas, I appreciate so much the insight that you've given about storytelling, about building a company, about building companies, and about really getting out and doing it so that you can learn. This has been an incredible conversation. Is there anything else that you have to add, or that we touched on, or that we didn't touch on?
I think there's so many things more to talk about, so we could probably create some episodes. But no, it's to anyone listening to this podcast, find me on LinkedIn, drop me a question or advice or anything. I'm all open to kind of pay it forward for anyone, because I'm still eager to learn, and through your questions, I will learn something new potentially. So just reach out.
We will definitely put a link to the LinkedIn in the show notes. Is there anywhere else that anybody looking for more about you or about the company can find out more?
Well, you have the Nomono webpage, nomono.co. I think that's also a good source regarding Nomono, what we think about the podcast, but also what's coming for us as well. And there's a lot of videos there if you're more interested to know about the company we're building. And there you can get a sense of also of design. It's so important with the tone of voice and the face of the company. We've been invested heavily, and I think that's also a red thread on the products, the teams, and the companies have been building is very focused on the brand identity and the design of it as well.
Yeah, Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Well, before I let you go, we usually wrap up with 2 final questions. We call them shout outs and gripes, but do you have any shout outs to anything that you've read or watched or listened to recently that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I haven't had time to do so much reading lately, so it's more watching things. And I'm a big consumer of YouTube, and I think it's very compelling. And coming from the old era of following Steve Jobs and kind of look up to him and what's he been doing, I'm still the kind of guy who still goes back to old keynotes and find inspiration there. And you can go like 10 years back in time, but there's still so much good things there. So I strongly, and I think people heard it, but I still kind of use Steve Jobs keynotes because the storytelling he does is so on point. So I think it's still a lot to learn from that.
Yeah. Those are absolutely great. Awesome. And I guess final question then, any products that you have tried or used that you want to give a shout out to, or a gripe, if there's anything that you've used and hasn't been super stellar?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of cars. I do change and switch out cars a lot because they are kind of an immersive experience. And right now I have a car that I really like. It's a Polestar 2. I used to work with those guys before back in Volvo, so I'm happy to see they're kind of progressing. So it's an awesome car in terms of design, the whole brand. Me being Swedish, there's even Swedish gold seat belts, and it's so nitty gritty. So even the valve caps are in Swedish gold. So I just to see how they kind of do that through is really awesome. So that's a product I enjoy a lot at the moment. The bad product is the same product. It's the Polestar 2 as well. But it's not the car, it's not the design. It's the software. and application. It's amazing how you can do such a bad application in 2022. How it's not syncing, how it's not talking. You're trying to control the heat, you're trying to control the locks. So that's pretty sad, because the rest of the car is amazing, the design and the feel of driving it, and but then it comes back to the app there, and I think that a lot of car manufacturers are, so they have some work to do there, to be honest.
Yeah, struggling with the software side. Totally understand that. Yep. Okay, Jonas, this has been, again, an amazing conversation. And like you said, I think we could probably do several more episodes based on a number of the different topics, but really, really appreciate the insight that you've given. Super excited to see more of what is coming with Nomono, the things that you're working on, and spatial audio in general. I think we've probably just hit the tip of the iceberg on some of the exciting things coming down the pike. So super excited to see more, and really look forward to hearing more about it and seeing more in the near future. But thanks again so much for your insight and for everything.
Thank you, Carl, for having me as well. I'm looking forward to get to Salt Lake City and get some champagne powder as well. It's much better than the Norwegian one.
Well, we look forward to having you here. Let me know when you're out, and we can definitely hit the slopes.
Cool, man. Thanks.
Hey, all right. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks again for listening. If you like the show, be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on Twitter at prod_by_design. That's prod_by_design. You can follow me at Kyle Larry Evans on Twitter as well. If you want more product conversation, check out my newsletter, Product Thinking, at productthinking.cc. You can follow me on Medium at Kyle Larry Evans as well, or check out my Medium publication, Product by Design. Thanks again.